Fear and loathing. New numbers show it looks a lot like a lot of Republicans don't like Republicans, as we just saw there from the judge. Plus, repeal and replace. Almost half of Americans want current members out of Congress. Those are today's hot topics for our agenda panel. Farai Chideya is with The Root. Lee Fong is a writer for The Nation. And Steve Bannon is a producer for The Rachel Maddow Show and an MSNBC political contributor. Gang, it's great to have you all here. Steve, I want to start with you because we look at the USA Today and the cover of their polling out showing that 47% think that Congress would work better if most seats were replaced. So is the volatility, Steve, of the shutdown and the debt ceiling fight having more impact, more ripple effect than those would have expected on the right?
I definitely think so. I was thinking this morning about a quote from Ted Cruz in August. He said he expected a tsunami of support if the Republican Party followed his lead. And looking back, I guess he was right. It just, the waves kind of affected Congress more than in ways that he didn't really care for. But I absolutely think that these polls show that the American public is angry, they're frustrated, and they're turning against the GOP, whom they blame for the shutdown, for the debt ceiling crisis. And I think there's a real challenge for the Republican Party looking ahead. How are they going to get back on track after having created this huge fiasco that they should have seen coming but didn't?
Right. It's a tsunami sea change in the other direction for those on the right. So, Lee, you mentioned recent polling. It shows Republican committee chairs who are vulnerable to challenge next year, particularly in Michigan, California, Florida, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And last week, the Cook Political Report said that 14 House seats could shift towards the Democrats. So with that kind of momentum, do you think that it will actually hold and translate to a shift of power in the House come 2014?
I think it's certainly possible, Thomas. This USA Today poll that shows that Americans would like to replace Congress shows deep public dissatisfaction with Speaker Boehner's leadership. And I think it ties in well with this MoveOn.org poll that shows that even with the most gerrymandered Republican Congress in American history, Democrats have a shot at taking back the House. And one of the key takeaways of this new data is that almost half a dozen Republican committee chairmen are vulnerable next year. And what some liberal bloggers are upset about is that the DCCC, this Democratic Party committee that's dedicated to making these campaign decisions, has not taken on these committee chairmen. Some argue that's because the DCCC is an inherently conservative organization. They shy away from these high-profile races. They prefer more blue dog, conservative Democrat candidates. The other argument is that these Republican committee chairmen have access to almost unlimited campaign cash. They can hit up the different corporations that fall under their jurisdiction. Take Congressman Buck McKeon. He's the chair of the House Armed Services Committee. He's very corrupt. He's very unpopular. And according to this new data, he would lose to a generic Democrat if the election were held today. The problem is, as head of a committee that oversees the military, he can go to the different defense contractors and raise a lot of cash, and that makes a lot of Democratic Party leaders nervous about taking him on.
Well, money talks. Let me just show everybody the DNC outraised the RNC last month, though, for the first time all year. $7.4 million for the DNC versus $7.1 million for the RNC. Farai, let me ask you, because the USA Today poll, it also shows that among Republicans and those who lean Republican, 52% think that Congress would be better off if those seats were replaced. And I know you've done a lot of reporting on the Tea Party. Are those numbers a sign of the growing divide among Republicans? Because most of the vulnerable Republicans are worried about losing their seats but being primaried from the right, from the Tea Party.
Absolutely. The Tea Party strategy has been very much to either actually run candidates or to cut deals with more moderate Republicans and say, if you don't move further to the right, we will run a candidate against you. And in some ways, we live in an increasingly one-party democracy. What I mean by that is that when you look at everything from cities to congressional districts, there are often parties that dominate completely, and all you have to do is win the primary to survive. So in that case, the Tea Party has pursued what is a very logical and powerful strategy of not just running candidates, but even the threat will often move existing Republican Party members to the right. And so it'll be very curious to see if we see a move to the right by some of the existing more moderate Republicans in Congress.
Fear and intimidation is an interesting motivator. Farai, Lee, Steve, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. You can always find more from our panel on our website, msnbc.com/Thomas-Roberts. And today